The galaxy was vast, filled with endless suns, countless planets, and civilizations older than memory. On the great maps of the stars, Earth was just a small dot of blue and green. To most empires, it was a place of little importance, a quiet world, a fragile world, a world not worth fearing. For centuries, humans lived under that shadow of dismissal. When alien explorers first came, they looked at Earth and saw only a young species. They measured humanity's weapons, their ships, their knowledge, and they laughed. "This species will never rise high," they said. "They are bound to their soil. They dream with eyes closed. They have no fleets, no armies among the stars. They will remain small." And so, humanity was forgotten. The Galactic Council, a gathering of the great powers, barely mentioned Earth in their meetings. The mighty empires, the Zorth Dominion, the Kelnar clans, the Hishari Union, spoke of war, trade, and expansion. Earth was a name that did not matter. To them, humanity was no more dangerous than dust floating between stars. But the truth was far different. Humanity heard the whispers. Humanity saw the laughter. And deep within the quiet blue planet, plans began to form. The humans were patient. They did not reveal their work. Instead, they looked to their skies and dreamed. For every rocket that launched, for every satellite that turned above the world, there was a hidden purpose. The world thought space was for exploration, for science, for peace. But humanity knew. One day, the galaxy would come. One day, someone would test their strength. That day arrived sooner than they expected. The Zorth Dominion was the first to show their hunger. The Zorth were an ancient empire, their fleets known for fire and conquest. Worlds burned beneath their march. They looked at Earth and saw another easy prize. When their first ships appeared above the solar system, the galaxy barely noticed. Why would they? To them, the Zorth were not marching to war, but to slaughter a defenseless child. Many even laughed, wondering how long the humans would last before begging for mercy. But on Earth, the leaders gathered. In underground chambers hidden from the eyes of the stars, generals, scientists, and commanders met. The weight of silence filled those rooms. They knew the galaxy believed humanity had no ships. They knew the enemy thought them weak. But humanity had spent centuries preparing for this very day. Every colony built in secret on the far edge of the solar system. Every station hidden among asteroids. Every silent factory turning in the shadow of moons. All of it was part of the plan. Now, the time had come to decide. Would humanity continue to hide, or would they reveal the truth? A single order would change everything. One old general stood, his voice quiet but strong. "The galaxy thinks we are weak," he said. "The enemy thinks we are children. But they are wrong. We have waited long enough. Now let us show them who we are." Eyes met across the table, tired, determined, filled with fire. Slowly, one by one, they nodded. The order was signed. Humanity would no longer remain silent. The world itself felt the weight of that decision. Ordinary people on Earth did not know the full truth. They only saw news of alien fleets moving closer. Fear spread across nations. Children asked their parents if they would be safe. Mothers prayed, fathers clenched their fists, soldiers prepared without hesitation. The skies above Earth looked peaceful, but in secret, deep within the void, machines were awakening. Engines lit up in hidden bases. Vast hangars opened where no eye had ever seen them. Sleeping giants stirred among the asteroids. The galaxy still laughed, still mocked the humans. "They have no fleet," they said. "They have no power. Earth will fall in days." But the humans were silent. They did not answer the laughter. They did not reply to the mockery. They simply prepared, because deep in their hearts, they carried something no empire could measure. something no weapon could destroy. They carried determination. They carried unity. They carried the fire of survival. And soon, that fire would burn across the stars. For now, the galaxy still thought Earth was alone, defenseless, small. But the veil was about to break. The silence was about to end. The forgotten world was about to roar. The Zorth Dominion did not waste time. They were an empire that had conquered 100 worlds and broken 100 more. To them, Earth was just another target, a world rich in water, minerals, and life, a world that looked too small, too weak, to resist their grasp. When their first warships entered the solar system, the stars seemed to darken. The vessels were massive, sharp-edged like blades, painted with the colors of conquest. Their engines burned with crimson light, and their banners of domination stretched across the void. To the galaxy, this was nothing new. The Zorth had done this many times before. They always arrived with power, demanded surrender, and destroyed those who resisted. Other empires watched from afar. Some pitied Earth, but none moved to help. Why waste fleets on a species too weak to survive? On Earth, fear spread like a shadow. The skies were still blue, the ocean still calm. But the people could feel something heavy pressing on their hearts. They saw the broadcasts, images of alien ships moving closer, alien commanders speaking with cold voices. The message was clear and cruel. Submit and live as servants. Resist and be erased. The leaders of Earth gathered once again in hidden chambers. The weight of those words filled the room. Some argued that humanity should negotiate, that survival was better than death. Others slammed their fists against the table, their voices sharp with anger. "Serve!" one general spat. "Serve like cattle? No. Humanity will never kneel." But there was doubt, too. They knew the Zorth fleet was powerful. Even with the secret preparations, humanity had never truly tested its strength against the galaxy's great empires. What if their hidden ships were not enough? What if the galaxy was right, and humans were too weak? For long hours, the council argued, the air was filled with tension, with fear, with hope. At last, silence fell when the oldest admiral stood. His hair was gray, his eyes sharp as steel, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "They mock us because they believe we are small," he said. "They see only our world, not our will. But let them come. Let them see the fire they have, awakened. We will not bow. We will not beg. We will fight." The room grew quiet. The decision was made. Humanity would stand. The Zorth fleet moved closer, their warships spreading like a black storm across the solar system. They sent their demands once more, this time with voices of open mockery. "You have no ships," the alien commander sneered through the transmission. His face was twisted with arrogance, his eyes filled with contempt. "You are nothing but ground dwellers clinging to a fragile ball of dirt. Kneel now, and perhaps we will let a few of you live." The message spread across Earth, broadcasted in every city, every town. People wept. Some trembled with fear. Others clenched their fists and shouted at the screens. Children asked their parents if the sky would fall. Soldiers prepared, their faces hard, their hearts steady. The world seemed to hold its breath. But above them, in places unseen, humanity's true strength was awakening. In the dark shadows of Saturn's rings, vast hangars opened. Engines hummed with power that shook the silent void. Ships, Colossal and black, began to rise. Their hulls were marked with the flags of Earth, their weapons waiting like claws of fire. In the asteroid belt, hidden stations came alive. Dreadnoughts emerged from caves of rock, carriers unfolded like giants stretching after sleep. Pilots sat in cockpits, their hands trembling not with fear, but with anticipation, and beyond the moon, behind its quiet gray face, the greatest secret of all stirred. The lunar fortress, a station larger than anything the galaxy imagined humans could build, lit its lights for the first time in centuries. Its docks released fleets upon fleets, warships sliding into the dark like silent predators. The galaxy had believed Earth was empty. They had thought humans had no ships, but humanity had been patient, hiding in the shadows of their own system, building in silence, waiting for this very day. On Earth, ordinary people did not yet know the truth. They prayed, they worried, they held their loved ones close. But the leaders knew, the generals knew, the pilots knew. The Zorth would not find a helpless child. They would find a world ready to fight. One young commander stood on the bridge of a hidden carrier as it moved into formation. His hands rested on the rail, his eyes fixed on the stars ahead. He remembered the voice of the alien commander mocking his people. He remembered the fear in his sister's voice when she asked if they would survive. He whispered, soft but strong, "They will see. They will all see." Across the void, thousands of other voices whispered the same. Men and women, soldiers and captains, engineers and pilots. They did not fight for glory. They did not fight for conquest. They fought for their world, their families, their children. For Earth. The Zorth grew confident as their ships neared Earth's orbit. They expected no resistance, only silence. They sharpened their weapons, ready to strike fear into the hearts of humans. But the silence was not weakness. The silence was waiting, and soon that silence would end in thunder. Because the humans had decided. They would not kneel. They would not fade into history as slaves. They would rise. The galaxy believed. Earth had no ships, but the galaxy was wrong. The storm was coming. The Zorth Dominion entered Earth's orbit with the arrogance of conquerors. Their warships spread across the sky like black wings, blocking the sun in many places. People on Earth looked up and saw shadows moving across the heavens. Some cried, some prayed, others clenched their fists in silence. The Zorth commander sent one final message. His voice was sharp, filled with mockery and disdain. "Humans of Earth," he declared, "this is your last chance. Kneel now, surrender your world, and perhaps we will allow some of you to live. Refuse, and you will all burn. We are the Zorth. Resistance against us is death." The transmission ended. Silence fell across the planet. For a moment, the world seemed frozen. It felt as if history itself was holding its breath. And then, everything changed. From the far side of the moon, the darkness broke. Vast shadows began to move larger than mountains, silent and unstoppable. At first, the Zorth thought they were rocks or debris, but then the lights came alive. Engines roared, hulls gleamed, cannons shifted, human warships rose. Not one, not 10, not 100, but thousands. Colossal carriers, their bays filled with fighters. Dreadnoughts, armored like titans, bristling with weapons. Stealth cruisers, black as the void, sliding into formation like predators. Destroyers and escorts, sharp and ready, moving in perfect unity. From the asteroid belt, more fleets emerged, engines blazing as they joined the formation. From Saturn's hidden rings came carriers the size of cities, their hulls painted with the blue and green of Earth. From the lunar fortress, entire squadrons poured into the open sky. The heavens were no longer empty. They were filled with human steel. On Earth, people looked up and gasped. The skies that had been dark with Zorth ships now shone with something greater. Ships of their own world. Ships that no one had ever known existed. Hope swept through the cities like fire. Children pointed at the sky and shouted. Elders wept with relief. Soldiers saluted as the warships blazed above them. The message was clear. Humanity was not defenseless. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was ready. On the flagship of the Zorth, silence fell. The commander, once so confident, now stared at the endless fleets filling the stars. His mouth tightened, his hands trembled slightly. He had expected nothing. He had expected slaves and cowards. Instead, he saw an armada so vast it stretched beyond sight. "What is this?" he muttered. "This cannot be," but it was. Humanity had hidden their strength for centuries, building in silence, waiting for the day they would need to rise. And now, before the eyes of the galaxy, they had revealed it all. On board one of the human dreadnoughts, a young pilot sat in her cockpit. Her heart pounded in her chest, her hands tight around the controls. She remembered her family back on Earth, their faces filled with fear when the Zorth arrived. She whispered to herself, "This is for them. This is for all of us." Around her, squadrons of fighters lit their engines, forming wings of fire that stretched across the void. The human fleet moved as one, like a great beast waking from a long sleep. Admirals gave commands. Captains stood tall. Crews prepared for battle. Every heart burned with the same flame, not conquest, not greed, but survival. They would not let their world fall. They would not let their children be enslaved. The Zorth commander regained his voice. His arrogance cracked into rage. "Destroy them!" he roared. "They cannot match us! Fire! Burn them from the stars!" His fleets obeyed, cannons charged. Energy beams ripped across the void, missiles streaked through the darkness. The first shots of war blazed, but humanity did not flinch. The colossal Earth fleet answered. Dreadnoughts unleashed storms of plasma. Carriers released waves of fighters that cut through the void like knives. Missile silos opened, launching thousands of warheads that streaked across the heavens. The silence was shattered by thunder. The battle had begun. Above Earth, the skies burned with fire and light. Explosions flared like suns. Ships twisted and turned, beams of energy slicing through the dark. The Zorth, once so confident, found themselves overwhelmed by the sheer numbers of humanity's fleet. For every Zorth ship that fired, 3 human ships answered. For every squadron they sent, humanity sent 10. The balance of power had shifted in a single moment. The galaxy, watching from afar through hidden transmissions, was struck dumb. On countless worlds, screens lit up with the sight of Earth's fleet. Emperors stared in silence. Councils argued in panic. The question whispered across every hall of power was the same. How? How did humans do this? But the humans did not think of the galaxy. They did not think of glory. They thought only of survival, of home, of Earth. On one warship, a captain spoke to his crew. His voice was calm, steady, like a father guiding his family. "Remember why we fight," he said. "Not for conquest, not for pride. We fight for the people below us. We fight for our world. Let no enemy pass. Let no shadow touch the earth." The crew answered with a roar. Their hands moved with determination. Their hearts beat as one, and the ship surged forward into the storm. The Zorth fleet began to falter. Their commanders shouted in panic, their formations breaking under the relentless storm of humanity's attack. They had thought Earth would be a child. Instead, they had awakened a giant. The first Zorth cruiser exploded, torn apart by missiles. Then another, and another. Fire spread across their ranks. The humans pressed harder, refusing to give the enemy a moment to breathe. The Zorth commander watched as his ships fell one after another. His arrogance was gone, replaced by fear. He had underestimated them. He had underestimated humanity, and now he was paying the price. On Earth, people watched the battle unfold in the skies above. They saw their ships, their fleet, their defenders, fighting against the monsters that had come to enslave them. Tears filled their eyes, not of fear, but of pride. For the first time, the galaxy saw the truth. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not defenseless. Humanity was a storm. The sky had awakened, and the stars themselves trembled. The heavens burned. Above Earth, the void had become a battlefield of light and fire. Where once the stars shone in silence, now they were hidden behind explosions and storms of energy. The Zorth Dominion, proud and arrogant, had thrown their full strength into the attack. But humanity, awakened from centuries of silence, answered with a storm that shook the galaxy. Ships clashed like titans. Fighters streaked through the dark, weaving between beams of plasma. Missiles lit up the sky like falling stars. The soundless void echoed in hearts with the thunder of war. On the bridge of the Zorth flagship, the commander roared in fury. His once calm eyes now burned with desperation. "Hold the line!" he shouted. "Do not falter! They are only humans! Break their fleet!" But his words carried little strength now. For every Zorth ship that surged forward, humanity sent 3. For every squadron the Dominion unleashed, humanity met them with fire and fury. The commander's aides looked at him with fear in their eyes. They had never seen the Zorth struggle like this. The Dominion had crushed countless civilizations, yet now, against Earth, their victory was slipping like sand through their claws. In contrast, aboard one of Earth's great dreadnoughts, the atmosphere was calm but fierce. The captain stood tall, his eyes steady as he watched the chaos outside. "Focus fire on their heavy cruisers," he commanded. His voice was not one of panic, but of resolve. "Protect the carriers, shield the fighters, every ship has a role, do it, and we win." The crew responded with determination. Their hands moved swiftly, guiding weapons, locking targets, launching waves of missiles. They were not fighting for conquest, but for survival, for home, for the children watching from below. The dreadnought's cannons blazed, tearing through the shields of a Zorth cruiser. A cheer erupted on the bridge as the enemy vessel exploded into fragments of burning metal. In the fighter wings, courage burned even brighter. Pilots danced through the void, weaving between deadly beams. One young pilot, her voice shaking but strong, spoke over the comms. "They called us weak," she said, her eyes fixed on the enemy ahead. "They called us children, but today they will learn what it means to face humanity." Her squadron answered with a roar of approval. Together they dived into the enemy formation, unleashing missiles that cut through Zorth fighters like a blade through glass. The battle raged for hours. The void became a storm of light and shadow. Ships died screaming, their wrecks spinning silently into the endless dark. For the people of Earth, watching from their cities, it felt as if the sky itself was on fire. Fear gripped many hearts, but alongside that fear came pride. They saw their fleet, hidden for so long, rising to protect them. They saw human ships standing tall against an empire that had ruled the stars for ages. They saw courage, not weakness, in every home, in every street. Voices rose in prayer, in cheers, in tears. Humanity was united like never before. The Zorth, however, were breaking. Their arrogance had been their weapon, but now it had turned into their greatest weakness. They had not prepared for a real fight. They had not believed humans had strength, and now the cost of that mistake burned in their ships. One Zorth cruiser, desperate to retreat, turned away from the battle. But before it could escape, 3 human destroyers surrounded it. Missiles and plasma ripped into its hull, tearing it apart in seconds. Another Zorth battleship, larger than mountains, tried to push through the human line. But Earth's dreadnoughts met it head-on, their cannons pouring fire into its shields until they shattered like glass. The massive vessel broke apart in a blaze that lit up half the battlefield. The humans pressed forward, step by step, ship by ship. On Earth's flagship, the High Admiral stood silent for a moment, watching the chaos of battle unfold. Around him, officers shouted reports. Enemy ships destroyed, friendly losses mounting, reinforcements arriving. But the Admiral's mind was not on numbers. It was on the people below, the billions of souls watching the skies, their hopes pinned on this moment. "Transmit to all ships," he said quietly. A pause. Then his voice rang out across the fleet. "Hold the line. Fight with everything you have. Remember who you fight for. You fight for your families, for your world, for humanity itself. Do not yield. Do not break. Today, we show the stars who we are." The message reached every ship, every pilot, every soldier. And when they heard it, their hearts burned brighter than before. The fleet roared back into the storm with fury renewed. The Zorth commander, watching his fleet crumble, felt rage and fear claw at his chest. "This cannot be happening," he growled. "They were nothing. They had no ships. But his words died as another of his cruisers exploded. His aides whispered in panic, begging him to retreat, but his pride held him frozen. He had underestimated them, and now his empire was paying the price. The battle stretched on until the stars themselves seemed to weep. The heavens glowed with burning wrecks, trails of fire marking the graves of ships. Both sides had lost much, but it was the Zorth who bled the most. Their once proud formation was shattered, their numbers dwindling, their courage failing, and humanity stood tall. On Earth, the people saw the tide turning. They saw their defenders holding strong. Hope turned to pride. Pride turned to joy. In homes and streets, voices rose together. "We are human! We are not weak!" The cry echoed across the planet, reaching the hearts of those who fought above. It became a fire that no enemy could extinguish. At last, as the battle reached its breaking point, the Zorth line collapsed. Ships fled in panic, commanders shouting desperate orders to retreat. The once invincible fleet which had come to enslave a world now scattered like frightened prey. The humans did not chase in greed. They held their formation, guarding Earth, ensuring no enemy would touch their home. The battle was not about conquest. It was about survival, about freedom, about sending a message that no one could ever forget. And that message was clear. The forgotten world had risen. The quiet species had roared, and the stars themselves now burned with the fire of humanity's defiance. Where once the Zorth Dominion's fleet had stretched across the heavens, now only wreckage remained. Burning fragments drifted silently through the void, broken pieces of once mighty warships. The battle that had begun with arrogance and threats had ended with the Dominion fleeing in terror. On Earth, the people looked up and saw not fear, but hope. The skies were no longer filled with the enemy's shadow. They were filled with the proud silhouettes of human warships, scarred but unbroken. For the first time in history, the entire planet breathed as one. In the capital of Earth, bells rang. In villages and cities alike, people poured into the streets. Some wept openly, others embraced strangers. Children waved flags made in haste. Families who had hidden in fear now stood outside, pointing at the glowing trails left by humanity's defenders in orbit. "Look," one mother whispered to her child, her voice trembling with emotion. "Those are ours. They are our ships." The little boy's eyes shone wide, filled with pride. For generations, humanity had been mocked as weak, forgotten as small, dismissed as powerless. But now every human heart beat with the same truth. They were not weak. They were not powerless. They had stood against giants and won. Above the world, the fleet slowly regrouped. Ships battered and wounded held formation, their lights blinking, proudly in the dark. Crews worked tirelessly, tending to the wounded, repairing damage, gathering survivors from destroyed vessels. On one carrier, a pilot was pulled from her cockpit. Her hands still shook from battle, her uniform stained with sweat, but her eyes burned with fierce pride. Did we win?" she asked, her voice breaking. Her commander placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Yes," he said softly. "We won! You fought for Earth, and Earth stands free." Tears streamed down her cheeks, but they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of relief, of pride, of victory. The High Admiral of Earth stood on the bridge of the flagship, gazing at the stars beyond the shattered battlefield. Around him, officers worked in silence, their faces pale with exhaustion but lit with quiet joy. "Transmit to all ships," he said. His voice was calm, but it carried a weight that touched every soul. Moments later, across every vessel, across every frequency, his words reached them. "Men and women of Earth, the battle is over. Today you have defended our home. Today you have shown the galaxy that humanity is not weak. We are not prey. We are not slaves. We are free, and we will remain free. Your courage has written a new chapter in history. Never forget this day." The Sci-Fi message echoed through every ship. Crews cheered, pilots cried, engineers embraced one another. Even in the silence of space, humanity's roar shook the heavens. But it was not only Earth that heard. Across the galaxy, countless worlds had watched the battle in secret. Hidden transmissions had carried the images of humanity's rise, of the colossal fleet filling the skies, of the dominion shattered in defeat. On distant thrones, emperors shifted uncomfortably. In grand halls, councils argued in panic. Across empires, people whispered words they had never spoken before. Humans, humanity, the forgotten world has risen. Fear spread like wildfire. If humans had hidden such power for so long, what else had they hidden? If a world once mocked as weak could bring an empire to its knees, what would happen if they chose to strike first? The balance of the galaxy, once stable, now trembled. But the humans did not march to conquer. They did not raise their banners above alien worlds. Their message was not one of domination, but of warning. From Earth, a transmission was sent, broadcast across every channel, every network, every corner of the stars. The High Admiral himself appeared, his uniform simple, his eyes steady. "To the empires of the galaxy," he said, his voice calm but unshakable, "you looked upon our world and called us weak. You thought we had no fleets, no armies, no strength. You believed we would kneel." He paused, his words heavy in the silence. "You were wrong." Across the galaxy, billions listened. "We do not seek conquest," the Admiral continued. "We do not seek to rule your worlds. But know this, we will never kneel. We will never be slaves. We are human. We will fight for our home, for our freedom, for our right to stand among the stars. If you come to enslave us, you will find only fire." The transmission ended. No more needed to be said. On Earth, the people celebrated through the night. Fires of joy burned in every city. Lights filled the skies. Voices rose in unison. Old enemies embraced as brothers. Nations once divided stood united. Humanity had faced the galaxy and found itself unbroken. But amid the joy, there was also silence. For the dead who had given their lives, for the ships that would never return, for the families who had sacrificed everything so others might live. Humanity wept for them, but even in sorrow their pride did not falter. In homes, in halls, in the quiet of midnight, people whispered the same words again and again. They thought we were nothing. They thought we were weak. But we are human. And so the galaxy changed. The Zorth Dominion, once feared, now trembled in shame. Their defeat at Earth's hands spread across the stars, shattering the myth of their invincibility. Other empires, who had once mocked humanity, now watched with wary eyes. The balance of power was broken, replaced by fear of what the humans might do next. But Earth did not seek to dominate. They rebuilt, they healed, they prepared, not for conquest, but for the future. Humanity had shown the galaxy their fire, but they also showed restraint. For that, the galaxy respected them even more. On the bridge of the flagship, the High Admiral looked once more at the Earth below. Its oceans glimmered blue, its lands shone green, its people alive with hope. He let out a long breath, his voice soft, meant for no one but himself. They thought we had no ships. They thought we had no strength. But we have risen, and now the stars will never forget us. From that day forward, the galaxy knew the truth. Humanity was no longer a forgotten world, no longer mocked as weak, no longer dismissed as small. They were the storm that filled the heavens with fear. They were the voice that could not be silenced. They were humanity, unbroken, unyielding, eternal, and the stars themselves bowed to their roar.